All right, let's jump into Module 1, where we're going to talk about getting started with Python. Now, Python is a general-purpose, interpreted, interactive, object-oriented, and high-level programming language. And I know that might sound like a lot. It does sound like a mouthful because, well, there is a lot there, but it is interactive and very object-oriented. We can have objects, we can tie our code to these particular objects, and they do consider this a high-level programming language just based on what you can do with this language. It's not really a lower-level language like machine language or something like that, where it's the underlying, or up here, where we're manipulating the underlying code. Now, this was created by, I'm going to mess up his name, I'm sure, Guido van Rossum, kind of like possum is what I was told. So around 85, 90 time frame. I really wasn't into Python back in those days because I was still in school. But this is when this came out. Now, the source code is available under the GNU General Public License. A lot of things we do out there in Linux world, right, is under the General Public License because it's all open source. You can go take it and you can do what you want to with it. You could create another programming language if you wanted to based off of the Python derivative. So you could really do your own thing. We're not going to take it that far in this course. We're just going to use what they wanted us to learn back in the, like I said, 85, 90 time frame. Now, it's named after a TV show called Monty Python's Flying Circus, and that's a little dated. That's dated for me a little bit. It's not after the Python the snake. Now, and I think that's kind of funny they do that because if you look at the logo, that blue and yellow logo, I literally took that from the Python folks. So in one sentence, they say, oh, this was named after this. It's not named after the snake. But if you look at their logo, it looks like two snakes tied together almost. So I thought that was a little ironic. Now, it can be used on any platform, Windows, Mac, Linux. Now, we're going to be using a Windows machine. And with Python, there are two popular versions out right now. 2 and 3. I think it's 2.5 or 2.7, and then 3. There's 3.5 out there. There's lots of versions, but we're going to be using specifically 3.7. You'll see it when we get in there and download that. Most, if not all, of the code snippets, well, I know all of them will work in 3 because that's the environment that we will be working in. If you've taken Python before and you have an earlier version, I'd recommend you upgrade that just to make sure that the syntax is going to match. If you're just getting started with Python, right, if you feel like, hey, I want to take this course because I need to learn a little bit about Python. Well, first, that's fantastic. Second, if you don't follow the 3 version stuff, some of it's going to break, right? I mean, the first thing that pops out in my head is like a print statement. Right, because in 3 we have to have parentheses, and 2 we didn't have to have parentheses, and that can make a big deal to somebody just getting started in programming and getting started in scripting. So my recommendation to you is to get the latest and greatest, especially what we're using, if you want to follow along in this course. So how do we get Python? Right, we're going to go out there to www.python.org/downloads. I'm going to go there here in just a second because I don't have Python in here. I wanted to step through this entire process with you because I'm under the understanding that this course is geared for new Python developers, new application developers, new whatever. Maybe you're going into pen testing or cybersecurity. You can use Python to write your scripts. Right? You could use Python in your Nmap scripts. You could use Python in a lot of your scripts, your vulnerability scripts, trying to do scrapes off web pages. There's all kind of good things we can do with Python. We may not get that deep in this course, right? Because there are certain bullet points that we're going to follow, and that's what we'll do. But anyway, we're going to get in here. The installation is pretty straightforward. Like I say here on the slide, I do recommend allowing the idle environment to be installed. I also recommend you allow Python to be added to the Windows path like it says. Now, idle is the platform to create our Python files. It is like a text editor, and you're going to see that. I'm not just putting that out there. I just wanted to let you know why it is that we need this in the first place. All right. So what I'm going to do now is jump out of PowerPoint. I'm going to jump over to python.org/downloads, and we'll see where we can download these files. All right, so I've jumped over here, python.org/downloads, and we are on a Windows machine here. If you are on a different system, look right down here. It says looking for Python with a different OS. So we got Linux, Mac OS X. If you have something other that you want to work on, the Linux, it'll all follow the same. It's not going to mean, excuse me, it's not going to make a difference if you're on a Linux system and I'm on a Windows system and I type something over here. You don't have to change the syntax, right? Whatever we do in Windows, I can take that file and put it right into Linux and it's going to fire right off. Just like I can take what I do in Linux, put it into Windows or put it into a Mac environment, it's all going to run the same. Right? So it really doesn't, that part doesn't make a difference. I would recommend whatever you're comfortable with, that's what you use to get through this video series. If you're a Windows user, download the Windows. That's what I'm getting ready to download. If you're a Linux user, right, if you like Ubuntu or Kali or whatever flavor of Linux, Python's probably already built in. However, you can go get the latest and greatest version if you want to do it this way, or you can do it through the bash shell if you know what you're doing. We're not going to go over every little intricacy things that you got to have for different operating systems. And then Mac, you can go get it from there as well. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and click on this download Python link here, and I'm going to go ahead and save this file. You can see it's not very large, right? 24 megabytes. That's not very large at all. I'm using Firefox here, so my downloads are right up here, and there's my Python. I'm going to go ahead and click on this and get this to run through the installation. And this looks just like that screenshot we talked about, right? So here's Python 3.73, 32-bit. It looks like it's what I downloaded. I guess I should have got the 64-bit, but it doesn't matter. Right down here, add Python 3.7 to path. That's that where I had it circled earlier, right down there at the bottom. Make sure you check that box. Right, now, you don't have to do that, but it's going to save you some heartburn a little bit later if you don't understand what path is. Path is what Windows and Linux and any operating system, they use that variable, that's an environment variable, and they say, okay, we can execute programs from this path without actually going to that directory. So let's say, for example, you installed something on your C drive and it goes into program files and blah, 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 blah. Well, when you execute that from the command line or wherever, you would have to go to that path. You'd have to go C:\enter, dir to see what your directory listing is, then get into CD programs and files or program files, hit enter, and then get into that directory, and then get into another directory, and then eventually you could run your executable. That's if you didn't have this in the path. Since we're going to put it in the path, I can simply type Python anywhere on the command line, and Python will execute. That's what we want. So please make sure you check that box. And let's go ahead. I think I'm going to go ahead and just say do it now, install now. So it's going to do everything for me. And the screen's probably going to flicker there for a second because it's doing the UAC for our user access control. And then it's going to go through the setup process, the initialization process, and put Python on our system. Now, when it's all said and done, we should be able to run our Python files, the .py files. We should have a text editor up there. We're going to use the idle. We'll see that on the next slide here. Should be in our path. And yeah, we should have everything that we need here. Looks like it's about to finish up here. It's putting in our bootstrap. And then once that gets done, we can jump in and test it. I'll jump back over to the PowerPoints as well, because now the fun can begin, right? Now that we have something installed or something that we can use, now we can jump into our first program. So, all right, says setup was successful. Thank you, Mr. Mark, there for porting that over. We'll go ahead and say close, and we're going to jump right back over to our PowerPoints now. All right, we're back here on this slide, and let's hit the next slide there. So we already went ahead, we installed it, we did that together, right? We just stepped through this. We had the download link. Now, don't forget, right, if you just watched and you haven't downloaded this yet because you're like, oh, I'm going to do it at the end of this chapter, at the end of this module, and that's fine. I've watched videos like that, training videos, where I kind of go through it and then I'll do things at the end. Don't forget to check that box, right? Path and idle environment. That gives us tools to use, and it's just going to make life a little bit easier for you. Now, a little bit about idle. Idle is an integrated development environment for Python, an IDE. Now, it's been bundled with the default implementation for a long time. It's even with this one. Now, an IDE, right, that is a development environment, and it provides features like coding, compiling, debugging, libraries. It will color code things. It will help you with your indentation. It's just a good environment to write your code in any code, not just Python. They've got IDEs for Java. They got IDEs for C++, C Sharp, JavaScript. Any development environment or programming language you can think of, they usually have an IDE for that. Now, you can choose from a number of environments to develop our programs inside of, the ones that we're going to be working on. And I went ahead and put a link out there from the python.org, folks. This is off their wiki. But they have lots of Python editors out there that you can play around with. Some of them are specifically for Linux. Some of them are specifically for Windows. Some of them are specifically for Mac. To each his own, whichever one you want to use. We're going to be using the idle in here, like I said. And we're also going to be using the interpreter. All right, so this first program that we're going to write here in a little bit, we're going to do it both ways. Right, we're going to open up the interpreter. Right, we'll just simply get right into there and type out what we need to type. And then we'll get into idle, create our text file, so to speak. We're going to name it with the .py extension, and then we can run that through idle. So now that we have Python and our integrated environment installed, well, let's take a look around and see what we've done so far. So let's see how we can get in and start up idle, how we do that in the first place. We're going to look at the installation and how to start up Python, right? So we can do that, like I said just a second ago, straight from the interpreter. Right, we can open that up, or we can save a file and have it open from an editor. We can even look at it, a text editor, save it and run it. It doesn't have to be an idle. If you like using Notepad or Notepad++ or whatever other program you want to use, I don't recommend you use Word because it puts in a lot of extra characters in the background. If you did just plain text, right, if it was just a plain text file, you could use Word, but I don't recommend that, especially if you're going to do some copying and pasting, right? Because like I've used PowerPoint obviously here. If I was to highlight and copy and paste some of this code out and put it in the idle environment, it doesn't work, right? Because of parentheses or an apostrophe, spacing, a lot of that is different when you bring it over from Word into a plain text file. So with that being said, let's jump on over. Let's start up idle. Let's start up our interpreter and see what it is that we're playing around with here. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit Control Escape, and I'm simply going to type Python. And when I start typing Python, you can see it says, oh, wait, we got a best match up here, an app. So I'm going to go ahead and left click on this. And you can see right now, this is the interpreter. I'm going to move this over just a little bit here so we can see what's going on. So this is that interpreter that I was talking about. And you can type commands straight from here, right? I could type out a command, if I could type, and hit enter, and it printed that to the screen. Hello, just like what we thought it may do. Right, so that was pretty easy, right? I do this a lot of times when I just want to test something real quick. I don't normally create an entire script or an entire program from this screen, but you can go in and test out things real quick on this. Like if you're working with something and you start getting a syntax error, right? And it's like, you can't do this because of blah, 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 right? And I'm like, what's going on, right? Because if you're just getting in new to programming, you better get used to heartburn, some headaches, the whole 9 yards, because we all do it. I know some guys have been programming their whole life, but they'll still leave out an apostrophe or a parentheses or an exclamation. They'll leave out something somewhere, and then that's just one line of code. Not a big deal. If I've got hundreds or thousands of lines of code, finding that one colon that I forgot to put in my for loop and it's breaking it may cause somewhat of a challenge. So my point is, don't be too proud to ask for help, and don't get too upset with yourself when things go wrong, right? Because things are going to go wrong. They're probably going to go wrong when I'm shooting this video. I'm trying to eliminate every possible problem that could go on, just because I don't want early developers or new developers out there just throwing their hands up saying, well, Dave can't even do it. Well, how am I supposed to do it? So I'm trying to eliminate that as much as possible. It's just the nature of the beast, right? It's not like a theory class. All right, so that is the interpreter. Now, if you can see on the, I'll click back here on this slide or move this over. It says, hey, we can save a file and have it open from the editor. So what we want to do is open up idle. So I'm going to type exit, open parentheses, close parentheses, and that'll get rid of our text editor. I'm going to hit Control Escape again on keyboard here, and I'm going to type idle this time. Now you can see our idle app up here. I'm going to go ahead and hit this, and it should open up our idle environment. And here it comes straight to our shell. All right, now I'm going to go up here and configure this because I want it. I'm going to go over here to the General tab, and I want it at startup, this part right up here. I want it to open the edit window. All right, I don't want it to open a shell window. I need my editor. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to open it right back up to show you the changes. Idle. And I'm going to click on this, and now it's a little bit different. Now we have what looks like a text editor up here, and that's exactly what we have. So I can still type the exact same thing. I have to save it now. I'm just going to type hello, and it saves it as a Python file. .py is what we want, so I'll hit save. Now I can hit F5 on the keyboard, and it should open up our shell, and there we go. There it says hello, and our program has executed from what we typed on the right-hand side, or this print hello right here, and you can see the results are over here on this side. So this is how we're going to do a lot of our scripting. Right, we're going to open up idle. We're going to open up that environment. We're going to type in our code in that environment, and then we're going to save it, and then we'll execute that. And we're going to do this over and over and over and over and over and over. Right? When it comes to coding, when it comes to programming, repetition, repetition, repetition. Right? Sounds like real estate, location, location, location. Right? You have to repeat this. You have to keep doing this. This is not like a Sec Plus or CCNA or ethical hacking class where it's mainly theory. We talk about this and this and this, and you have to memorize that to go take an exam or try to get that knowledge under your belt. You're literally going to be using this to do something, right? I can tell you all day long, right? Because this is not going to be a lot of theory in this course. I can tell you all day long, this is what this does, this is what this does. And you can sit there and say, okay, you said that's what it does. But until you actually practice with it, you get in there and break it, you make the mistakes, that's how you're going to learn it. I think of it like driving a car, right? I can tell you all day long how to drive a car or ride a bike, right? I say, okay, well, you got to get in the driver's side, get behind the steering wheel, the right pedal's the gas, the center pedal, or the pedal on the left, depending on how many pedals you have, right, is the brake, right? This is how we put it in gear, radio, air, and blah, blah. I can explain all that to you, but until you actually get in the car and drive it, if you can remember driving your car for the first time, it was a lot different than when you read that book in driver's ed, right? It was a different ball game. Same thing with programming and scripting and anything like that, really. You got to get your hands dirty. So we'll be doing these over and over and over. I highly recommend you pause the video. If you run into a problem, back it up, look at it again, type it out again. Try to understand exactly what's going on as you type it. All right, with all that being said, I'm going to close out these windows now because we saw this environment. Let me get out of here. I can just go ahead and close this. Now, what I want to do is create a working directory for this course. I kind of cheated a little bit because I knew I was going to download that and show you how things worked at the beginning. But you need a working directory for this course because, like I just said, we are going to create script after script or program after program after program to make things happen. Right, so we're going to create a working directory for this course, and then we're going to create our first program, the Hello World. Right, that's the first one you always create in any programming language. It doesn't matter what programming language you take. I think I've read this. I might have heard it from another professor or peer or something, but something to do with the Hello World is supposed to give you good luck on your future programming. I don't know if somebody made that up, but I've been doing the Hello World as a first program for the last 20-something plus years when I took programming back in college. This is the one we had to create. So let's take a look at this on the next slide, then we'll kind of do this stuff together here. So this is going to be our first program. We're going to open up our Python interpreter. Then we're going to type Python in the Windows search and select that, just bringing up the interpreter. This first part's in the interpreter. Then we're going to type out the following, that print hello world. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this already, my code snippets, what I've tried to do, and I may miss some, so please don't start sending emails yelling at me saying, oh, you didn't highlight that. I tried to have all the code snippets I have on PowerPoints highlighted in green. Right, that way you understand, hey, this is text that Dave's trying to tell me. Oh, this is something that I probably need to be typing in, or something that you could practice on your own in an interpreter or in idle or whatever. All right, so we're going to print or type out print and then the hello world, and then that should be displayed on the screen. All right, so first thing I want you to do is jump over to, if you're in Windows, jump into Windows Explorer. If you're in Linux or Mac, go create you a working directory. Right, I'm going to bounce out of the PowerPoints here real quick. I'm going to hit Control Escape. And I'm going to come down here to my Explorer, and I've created a whole nother directory here. I actually created a virtual hard drive on Windows is what I've done. I created a VHD file just for Python. So it's like another hard drive, really. It's only 200 megs, though. It's not very large. Because all these files we work with, I'm going to hover over this one. You see that hello is just 16 bytes. Right? It doesn't take up a lot of space, so you don't need gigabytes or terabytes of space for this course. Now, later on, you might write a program that, might be a couple hundred, few hundred megabytes large, and that's great. This one, they're probably all going to be under at least 1,000 kilobytes. I know Windows says, hey, that's a kilobyte size because it doesn't get smaller than that, but it's literally 16 bytes. All right, so I've created my working directory. Hopefully you have one now, so you can save. I want you to save all your .py files in there. All right. Also, what I'm going to try to do is all these py files that I create, have these available to you somehow on the LMS. We're still working on that part, but I'm going to try to get you that information so you can see every code snippet that we worked on. All right, so you might be able to download it and tie that in with the PowerPoint slides. With that being said, we have our working directory. Let's jump over to the interpreter and try our first Hello World program. So I'm going to click off this back here in the back, and let's hit Control Escape again. And this time I'm going to type in Python because we want the interpreter. I don't want the idle environment right now. And let me move this over a little bit so we can see it all at the same time. So what we're literally typing is that print. I want you to type it out, P-R-I-N-T, open up a parentheses, put in your quotes, because we are typing what they call a string literal. Hello world, exclamation point, close off your quote, and close off your, let me move this out of the way, I'm sorry, your parentheses. So it should look something like that. Parent, open parentheses, put in your quotes, and type in hello world. Now, with that being said, we can hit enter. And it says hello world. Hopefully, when you hit enter, it said hello world for you. Now, you might start thinking and be like, ooh, that's pretty neat. We wrote something to the screen. And that's true, right? That's pretty cool. You just wrote your first Python program. You might be thinking, can I change up what's between the parentheses? Absolutely, right? Because that is our string, right? We have created, we've done a lot of things here we haven't even talked about yet. But we've created a string right there and had that print to the screen. Anything between those quotes will get printed to the screen. So I could hit the up arrow. Right? That gives me the last command I typed, and I can say hello world, change that, and say hello David, and then hit enter. And now you see it says hello world, David. Right now that doesn't make a lot of sense. I was just adding in some more information in there for you. So that's how we could use the interpreter. But again, remember, we're not going to use the interpreter a whole lot once we get going. We're going to use our idle environment, right? And that's what we're talking about right here. So let's change it around some. Let's use idle to create our files, and then we're going to execute those files with the built-in interpreter into idle right now. Now, hopefully you allowed Python to be added to the path environment during installation. You check that box down there at the bottom. So this is the steps we're going to go through. We're going to open up idle. Select file, new file is going to open up the editor where we can create our files. Now that may not open up the editor. All right, that's going to open up the editor if you are in the shell. But remember, I went to the config and I changed it because I like it when the editor shows up first, because that's what I was going to work with. So step number 2, if you didn't make that change, that little bullet point where it says this opens the editor, that's going to happen. If you made that change in the config, in idle, like I did just a while ago, number 2 you won't have to do. We're back in the editor. Step number 3 here. We're going to type print, open parentheses, open our quotes, and we're going to type hello there. We already did hello world, right? So we're going to change it. We're going to say hello there, close off our quotes, close off our parentheses. Very important that you do that. Then we're going to save that, save it to that working directory that we're putting all of our Python files in. And then from the editor, we can say click run module, or you can press F5 on the keyboard. So with that being said, let's open up idle and let's make this happen. So I'm going to hit Control Escape on the keyboard again, and I'm typing idle and hit enter. So here is our idle environment. I'll bring this down just a little bit and right over here so we can see what we're doing. So quite literally, what's in green in the background there, it says in the editor type print, and I'm going to say hello there and close that off. Now we can save that file, save as, whoops, I said save copy as, didn't want to do that. So let me get down here to my working directory. There's Python, here it is, and I'm going to say hello there. I'm going to go ahead and click save. So now it's saved. You see it up here at the very top, hello there.py, and it tells me where it is. Now, again, I can click on run, right, to say run module, or I can hit F5. F5 just as easy for me. That should open up our interpreter, and boom, there's our shell that says hello there. So we are successful. Congratulations. You have written your first Python program. Let me close all this off. And that's going to wrap that up on this module here. We did a couple things, right? Don't forget, pausing the video during this is going to be extremely important. Don't forget, you have to practice this. Do not just watch this video series and think you got it, right? I'm not saying you're not a genius. You very well may be. You may have photographic memory, whatever the case may be. That's not everybody. I worked with people all over the world all the time, and most people are not like that. I'm not like that. So you're going to have to pause it. You're going to have to practice it. You're going to have to get your hands dirty. So we looked at the interpreter. We looked at idle. We looked at all kind of good things in this one so far. So sky's the limit pretty much when it comes from here, but this is just getting us started. We're going to jump into module 2 coming up next. So I'll see you over there in just a few seconds.